Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and joining the show from, I would say, the podcast that I spend the most minutes with during the NFL season and off season. Check the mic, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We have 50% of that combo here with Steve Palazzolo returning to the show for his 100th appearance ever on a show of mine. Steve, how you been, man? I've been enjoying the show, and I really like the off-season time where you guys kind of kick your feet back, you make some predictions, you look at old drafts, you have some fun. I like this time of year because I don't feel stressed, but we're talking about football.
Yeah, I like this time of year too. Look, I love football as much as the next person, but I'm not there. I'm not counting down to week one. I want to enjoy my summer, and I like the ramp up with training camp and preseason, and so I just need a few more weeks off. But yeah, I enjoy the off season, getting to decompress after the draft and the whole season.
So you guys have one of my favorite podcast bits of any that I've ever listened to, which is where listeners send you guys bets and you will accept them, where you talk about, hey, this year the Falcons fan will send you Michael Penix is throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. And then you go through at the end of the season and figure out which bets were right. So the similar version here is that before every season, I do 50 predictions. So I want to go through all 50 with you. No, I'm just kidding. I want to go through some of my favorite predictions from 2025, and I want you to tell me, am I being ridiculous? And I've called them bold. Some I think are more bold than others. I want you to tell me, am I being ridiculous? Is that a good prediction? Do you agree with it? And I think the best place to begin with this is with the Vikings punter in his net. No, in the JJ McCarthy. Okay, obviously, JJ McCarthy. We could get to Ryan Wright's net punting eventually, but here's my bold prediction for JJ McCarthy. It's very specific, but I want to run through it. 3,875 yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 picks, and ranked 11th by Pro Football Focus, your former employer. Steve, how do you fit? You want me to run through it again if you didn't catch that?
I got that.
You got it. Okay. How do we feel about that prediction for JJ McCarthy 2025?
I think that's bold. I think, man, I mean, quarterback uncertainty, man, that is very difficult. And then you're going to weigh the situation, which I think is outstanding. Obviously, the investment in the offensive line. We just pre-recorded a show on the best units in football. And Vikings pass catchers I've been raving about. They're in my top 10 with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson leading the way. So the supporting cast helps quite a bit. I think the number 11 PFF ranking is probably a little aggressive, and maybe the interception total is a little aggressive. Everything else seems fine. I mean, pushing 4,000 yards, is that even a massive accomplishment in a 17-game schedule these days? You're assuming health. So not really. 26 touchdowns, that's not wild at all. Today's NFL and that supporting cast. So I'll give you the yes on the yards and the touchdowns. I think we'll go a little bit higher on the picks, and a worse PFF ranking, probably closer to 15 to 20, we'll say, would be my optimistic, but cautiously optimistic JJ McCarthy projection.
Okay, the reason I went with that, I've got PFF here. Let me fiddle around a little bit. So Sam Darnold last year was 8th. The 11th best quarterback in the league last year was Kyler Murray. Brock Purdy was 10th. Then Jared Goff 11th, CJ Stroud 13th, Aaron Rodgers 14th. Now last year, I think it was a tough year on some quarterbacks, but CJ Stroud had not that great of a year. Aaron Rodgers, not that great of a year. Brock Purdy was kind of up and down a little bit. If he lands in that range, see, part of it to me was earlier this offseason, I went through all the playoff teams and where the quarterbacks ranked by quarterback rating, PFF grade, ESPN's QBR, and just trying to figure out like how good you have to be an average playoff quarterback. And I landed on 11th is where you have to be. And I think if JJ McCarthy can be the 11th best PFF grade, and maybe you could go into a little bit with your experience of like what that would mean, like what that would say about him to be the 11th best quarterback by PFF. But I thought if they're going to win the division, if they were going to be a serious Super Bowl contender going into the playoffs, because I think they have the coaching and the rest of the roster to do that, I don't think that McCarthy can be the 21st best quarterback in the league. I think that he has to be somewhere in that ballpark of top half of the league.
So I think what's interesting is I always viewed PFF grade as a really good way of isolating the quarterback's play outside of the production. And I think every stat is trying to do that. And I've always believed PFF does it the best. I think in this system where Kevin O'Connell has done a really nice job of not only putting players in position to succeed, but also getting good, even from a PFF perspective, good quality quarterback play from Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins. But when you add in the supporting cast here, if you get 10 or 11 QB play, I mean, that's what that has potential to be the best team in the league. That's the significance of it. I honestly think that if JJ McCarthy ranks, say, 20th in PFF, he could still put up huge numbers because of the supporting cast, because of what O'Connell has done, because of honestly, or the Vikings can have success because I think the defense is going to be good again with their additions too and what they've done on both lines. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic there because when you said the players that were ranked 10th, 11th, 12th in that range, CJ Stroud, one of the better rookie seasons of the last decade 2 years ago. Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Famer at the tail end of his career. Brock Purdy just signed his big contract. Those guys are good. Those are good quarterbacks. And they've all ranked higher, right? The kind of your point was like Purdy was higher the year before. Stroud was higher the year before. Rodgers, of course, has been near the top. And they all kind of had down years. So JJ, he's just such an unknown, right? It's just you've got whatever you thought of him coming out of college. And I'm old and wise now, Matt. My QB draft takes are held very, very lightly. I know not to, plant my flag too early on any quarterback. I know not to. I'm too wise to do such things in a Shouty Show world. So and I didn't really have a strong opinion on JJ either way anyway. But even if I did, I wouldn't say, well, I loved him, he's going to be top 5, or I hated him, therefore he's going to be, bottom 5. We'll see. I mean, there's still a lot of wait and see. So that's why I would say I'm more cautious and unwilling to say put him in the top half of the league without, seeing some NFL evidence.
As we try to project, the thing I kind of go back and forth on is the uncertainty, which I know, having only seen him at practice, it does translate to actual games, but not flawlessly what they're doing in training camp practices and one preseason game against the Las Vegas Raiders second team, which he was very, very good, but still nonetheless. And I think you make a fair point about the interceptions, as younger quarterbacks are more prone, I think, to making those mistakes. And we see that sometimes at training camp. But what I can't stop thinking about is when Nick Mullins played quarterback for KOC and how he averaged 400 yards a game. And then think about where we were with Sam Darnold last year. I think I played the same game with your partner, Sam Monson. And I said, do you think that Darnold could rank 14th?
And he went under on everything, right?
No way. Yeah, yes. No way. He's never come close to that. He could never do that ever before. So there is a KOC effect. There is a Justin Jefferson effect. And I think what this boils down to is just how much you believe a supporting cast can elevate a quarterback. Because I look at AFC and NFC a little bit differently with this, where the AFC has all these quarterbacks where you go, okay, well, they'll be in the playoffs because they exist. Allen, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes. I think the NFC has been so dominated. It's kind of the trend of the last decade, maybe, or almost there. Brady wins a Super Bowl. Drew Brees, you have to go back a little while. But it's mostly been in recent years, San Francisco, Philadelphia, who's got the best team around their quarterback. And none of us would even say that Garoppolo, Purdy, or even Jalen Hurts are anywhere near that conversation with other quarterbacks. So I think there's a baseline of if you can be this tall to get on the ride, or if you can be this good to play in KOC's offense, you can win a lot of football games and even put up a lot of numbers. The other question I wanted to have surrounding this is how much you think they will shift their offense around an inexperienced quarterback, because I tend to think not much. I think they're still good. If they were airing it out with Sam Darnold, they're going to air it out with JJ McCarthy. But maybe should they? Because KOC has loved that pass button in the past.
I don't think they'll change much, but then that goes back to the draft question of, okay, what is JJ McCarthy? Was he a passenger on Michigan's national championship team? The famous game where they didn't throw the ball at all in the second half against Penn State because they didn't need to. All of the draft picks that they had, a deep offensive line, backfield, and defense, right? So same question, right? JJ McCarthy was only asked to throw the ball 25 times. Can he be a 40-plus attempt per game type of guy at the NFL level? We'll have that same question again. I think we are closing in at the point, though, where the elite quarterbacks, like it's always fun in football to try to decouple the quarterback from the coach. And the more evidence you get of like Tom Brady being separated from Bill Belichick, it's like, well, the elite quarterback is such a massive driver. You could even say Mahomes with Andy Reid. Andy Reid was perennial, Super Bowl contender, but never Super Bowl actual participant and winner until he got Mahomes. And so the elite quarterback makes that massive difference. But the way you described the NFC, it is really difficult to go back historically and find a coach who has been QB proof, so to speak, or always elevated the quarterback. And I think KOC is closing in on that world, right? Where you could say, so Kyle Shanahan, I think, is the clear example. For 15 years in the league, he's putting Matt Schaub on all-time lists from a statistical standpoint. RG3 historic rookie season. Matt Ryan goes from good to one of the best seasons of all time as an MVP. Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, like he's just every single guy. He's gotten the most out of them. KOC is now sitting on Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, 500 quarterback in his career. Darnold, a 350 quarterback in his career, whatever it is, becoming massive winners. So yeah, I mean, it is. You're one more data point away from saying KOC's in this. We trust him regardless of what happens, and what a weapon that is for Kwesi in the front office to say. Not that you knew this 3 years ago, but you're kind of banking on it. If he could do that with the rookie quarterback, okay, now we can load up on the defensive line like we have the last couple of years. Now we can overspend at guard and center and load up on the offensive line because we could trust KOC with the rookie quarterback. So look, I think he's been incredibly impressive, like closing in on top 5 coach in the league status, because as great as like a Dan Campbell is, when you have an offense multiplier at head coach, there's 3 of those guys in the league at any given time. I mean, Andy Reid's, so I'm back and forth on Andy Reid, but he's one of them. Mahomes took it to a new level. Shanahan, I don't even know if you could say Sean Payton at this point, because we haven't seen him get to the levels of where he was with Drew Brees. So there's not many. There's not many of those. Matt LaFleur's dabbled with it, I think, got the most out of Rodgers, maybe developed Jordan Love. There's not many. And I think KOC's closing in on being one of those guys. So, I might poo-poo your projections here early in the season because I'm just conservative during the offseason, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if JJ McCarthy exceeded it, because that's the trends that I think KOC has put forth these last couple of years.
Well, I also had to go at least slightly enough bold to have a conversation about it. If I went with just the average for a rookie or younger quarterback, although that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine this offseason, is the Shouty Shows saying, well, he's basically a rookie. Not really, if you understand what rookies have to go through to even learn a playbook. True. As opposed to somebody who was there for the entire season. He just didn't run scout team, which is useful, but all the other information he was able to gather to see how you lead a team the way that Sam Darnold did. All right, let me give you another bold one. A lot of discussion this offseason about Dallas Turner. They spent the first round pick on him and moved up in the draft to get him. Last year, he was a role player on this defense, but this year they did extend Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard's under contract long-term, but they let Patrick Jones go. They let Jahad Ward go. They're rotational rushers. He is in line to take over that position. I'm going with more than 7.5 sacks for young Dallas Turner, taking the big leap from year 1 to year 2. And just to add a little defense to my argument here, if you look historically, there are so many guys in the league who came in raw, especially if they were a little undersized for the position, who did not get a ton of sacks right away. Even like Khalil Mack had 4 sacks his first year. And I was looking at Melvin Ingram's career the other day and how maybe his first couple years, and then it clicked, and all of a sudden he was a freak. I think the same thing happens this year for Dallas Turner. Is that bold to you, or is that kind of obvious to you?
No, I think that's bold. I mean, I know my audience too. I might just agree with you and take the over and say that's fine. 7.5 plus is very much in the cards. I was a little lower on Dallas Turner, I think, than others. I liked him as the 3rd, maybe 4th edge in that first round. I liked Latu and Verse. Then probably Turner and Chop Robinson in discussing those guys. But I know a lot of people like Turner. the benefit here is being the number 3, being in pass rush only situations. I think the additions of Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen are absolutely massive. Even if only one of those guys hits, they're both a little bit older. They're both probably a year or two away from, removed from their best production. But those guys are pass rush specialists. So you're talking about the Vikings. And again, we just pre-recorded a show talking about the best units, and I added the Vikings defensive line in there because if you're talking about Dallas Turner as your number 3 edge rusher, you're in a pretty good spot. When you're talking about Allen and Hargrave, and then a guy like Jalen Redmond, one of my favorite sleepers in the NFL. Love that. Love the depth on this defensive line. So, yeah, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities. I would almost pose this to you. What does this do? Like, what does Brian Flores do with his scheme this year? Do you think the move the last 2 years, we're going to get two top-end edge rushers. Now we've got 2 top-end pass rushers on the defensive interior. Are we still blitzing at one of the top 3 highest rates in the NFL this year, like they have the last couple of years? Are they still, playing the trickeration game, or are they trusting a 4-man rush or, some sim pressures and moving Dallas Turner around and creating mismatches? I'm curious to know what they're going to do schematically. So I think 7.5, even if he only rushes the passer 250 times, is possible because of all the help that he has around him.
Well, and I was looking at Patrick Jones's role for them last year and how he was a major pass rusher for them and finished with 7 sacks. Most of them came in the first couple of games, as sacks tend to do. But even if he just takes on that role with a little dynamic element of dropping back in coverage from time to time, but I think they love the NASCAR package with the multiple edge rushers. And I also think with Andrew Van Ginkel and how dynamic he is, he might drop by 5 sacks this year, but be just as valuable because all of a sudden he's playing inside linebacker at times. That guy can do just about anything. So every single play you line up, there's a different personnel grouping staring back at you with guys lined up where you didn't expect them to be. And even just little OTA minicamp thing. Turner's lining up at linebacker. He's lining up this side, that side, kind of all over the place. So I think they want him to be a dynamic weapon. As far as how they're going to use the D-line, I think there's 2 different ways to go about it. One way would be to play an old school 3-4 and still rush 5 all the time, but have it be all your defensive linemen. Because I was kind of thinking like Joel Steed in there somewhere and, Kevin Green and Greg Lloyd. Like, is it going to look like a true 3-4 type of defense? Or they could also just rotate those guys in. So one play it's Allen, one play it's Hargrave. You have 2 DTs, you're rushing linebackers. Because I don't think you want to change a ton. You just had a top 5 offense. Like, you want Blake Cashman to blitz. You want Josh Metellus to blitz. But I think it just gives them this other button to push to say, all right, well, this is a game where we want 5 rushers all on the D-line. This is a game where maybe the quarterback struggles to pick up blitzes from the second level. So now we're going to do that. The biggest thing I think that makes Brian Flores great, Steve, is just how he never is locked into one line of thinking. I mean, last year, all of a sudden he plays an undrafted free agent, like 30 snaps in a game. And then we didn't see him again outside of a handful of snaps in a blowout game. It was like, he just decided that guy had a good matchup for that game. So he's like, I'm going to play him. And I think that like ever shape shifting type of mentality comes from Belichick, but it has really worked here with this level of personnel.
I do love that. I mean, look, Flores has been one of the most fun defensive coordinators to watch over the last couple of years because he's, there's really this homogenization of scheme in the NFL. Whereas like in college football, you have this really diverse, you could like put it in like 4 or 5 different quadrants, the styles of defense, offense and defense that are run. In the NFL, it's like 25 teams are just clustered in the middle. And then you have like a run heavy team and a super pass heavy team, and defensively like uber blitzing and no blitzing and all cover 3. Like there's just a couple outliers. Like Flores has just been this special level of outlier in many things that he's done, which includes, the number of rushers, extreme ends of 3-man rushes and 5+ rushes and every. But the way they're building the team with, I think, 5 legit potential pass rushers there, plus Jalen Redmond. And then you add in the fact that you have, Cashman can blitz a little bit. Ivan Pace Jr. was one of the best blitzing linebackers to come out a couple of years ago. Then Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner are 2 of the edge rushers that you would trust in coverage the most in the NFL as far as athleticism goes. So you do really have so many options up front, and I can't wait to see how it's all deployed.
Before I get you the next bold prediction, is this a top 5 defense again, you think?
Yeah, I think they have the potential there. It's funny because I'm doing a lot of the team-based unit rankings and various things, have my own numbers and projections on that. I mean, the Vikings come out strong in so many different areas, but the other part is, with my PFF history, a lot of what I do is look at the player level and, in isolation, you say, well, Jonathan Allen hasn't been great against the run the last couple of years, and Javon Hargrave hasn't been great against the run the last couple of years, but they can get after the quarterback. But I also look at the way the Vikings play team defense and loading the box up and creating that uncertainty and indecision. I really think they might have the best balance of they don't really have the Joel Steed, like the old school two gapping nose tackling. They don't have, great dudes on the interior for stopping the run, but they have good team run defense. So I feel good about their team run defense, and I feel good about their individuals rushing the passer and playing in the back seven. So I think when you put that all together, the flexibility, the depth, the flexibility of the scheme, and the fact that they stop the run as a unit and then have all the pass game flexibility that they have, I think they have all the makings of a top 5 defense. Absolutely.
And this is a good point about the PFF grades and stuff like that, which, you and I have both had long conversations about these grades. And every time you bring them up, it's like, well, it can't tell you this. It can't tell you this. And one of the things is we can use our brain to figure out like what these things mean. And sometimes with that run defense grade, it can really shift from year to year with individual players based on how a team is even asking someone to play. So Hargrave, for example, was pretty good in one place, I think Philadelphia, and then not so good in San Francisco. Well, are they asking him to just stop the run on the way to the quarterback, or are they asking him on certain plays to stuff gaps, which is going to get you a higher grade because you're not missing tackles in the backfield as you penetrate and things like that? Like, it's sort of complicated to figure out and isolate one player as a run defender just based on a grade. Like where are and linebackers all the time, like who's playing in front of you, and do you have a great Joel Steed or Gilbert Brown or Ted Washington in front of you, because your job is a lot easier at that point. So
can we do a 90s nose tackle show sometime, Matt? If there's anyone that I could do it with, I think it would be you.
Yes, I would love that. Sam Adams. I'm going to say Sam Adams, and then I'm going to move on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Although I need Williams Wall thrown in there, a little 2000s element to that. Okay, next prediction. On Christmas Day, hopefully you have got your Netflix set up so you can sit there on the Lord Jesus Christ's birthday and watch football as Christ meant to happen. So I have the Vikings and Lions that day deciding the NFC North. That game, just like how it came down to week 18, once again, there will be a battle, only this time at US Bank Stadium, where those two teams, whoever wins that particular game, will take the crown for the division. Is that something you would be interested in? Is that bold or not?
No, I love that. I think that's right. I mean, the other thing though, last year at this time, we were saying the NFC North might be the deepest division. I think we were looking at both of the Norths, AFC and NFC, and I think both were correct. The AFC North had a little bit of disappointment from the Browns and the Bengals early on, but you got the Steelers looking really good early, and the Ravens, once again, one of the best teams in the NFL. And then early on, every NFC North team was 4-2 or better at the same time. And then the Bears didn't win another game for 3 months. I get it. But they're going to be hyped up. They're one of the offseason winners. So the Bears, they're going to be tough and competitive. You got Ben Johnson moving there. The Packers have a strong enough nucleus. So it's going to be. I think it's another loaded NFC North and really competitive NFC North. But I think the Packers certainly were a tick below what the Vikings and Lions were last year. Tick below what the Eagles were. I would not be surprised to see something similar. I hate that we don't know what JJ McCarthy is. He is just such an unknown in this here. But if he's pretty good or better, I think the Vikings are going to be one of the better teams in the NFL again. And absolutely, I think challenging the Lions. So that uncertainty at quarterback for JJ, the uncertainty in Detroit not having Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. It's the first real turnover in this little run that the Lions have had, right? They've been starting in 2021, stacking brick by brick, a better roster, been very much together from a coaching staff. This is the first time you're taking a few of those building blocks away. First time you're actually pulling those away from the Lions. And all they've had, and I think they've been outstanding, but disappointing finish to their season last year. But they have just been continuing to add young players, getting better and better every year. Now's the first time they're going to be challenged with fewer coaching staff turnover, and then in the coming years, paying some of those young players and probably making some decisions. So it's an interesting time, I think, for the Lions. So I think there's uncertainty for them for the coaching staff. With the coaching staff, there's uncertainty with the Vikings at quarterback, but I still think they're the two best teams in the North, and I think that makes sense that they're battling for the division right late into the season.
And I think if you were just to do all roster rankings, which you guys did, that Detroit and Minnesota are right there. And the biggest question for Detroit that I have, I mean, two really, the interior of their offensive line has been such a weapon for them in recent years. Is it still going to be minus Frank Ragnow? Because Harrison Phillips was talking about playing against Frank Ragnow, and he was like, that's one of the hardest players in the league to go against as a defensive tackle. There's no throw in Tate Ratledge and you'll be fine, or whoever the hell else is going to play center for them. You just don't replace a player that good very quickly. And then the other part is there was such synergy between Ben Johnson and Jared Goff. It was like he fully, deeply understood what Goff can see, how he can throw, what works for him, those in-breaking routes, the play actions. Like, he's just good at that stuff. And is their new offensive coordinator really going to understand that? I think it's just as big of a question mark as having a young quarterback drop into a team that we've seen elevate a quarterback. So I thought that one was only mediocre bold, but it really comes down to how much do you believe in the Bears and the Packers? We've been talking about this a lot with the Packers, Steve. I just expected more this offseason. Like, at some point you have to stop pretending you still have Favre and Rodgers and start spending some money on someone other than Aaron Banks, who to me just doesn't move the needle at all and was one of the stranger moves of the offseason. But aside from that, okay, you're drafting a receiver. Okay, all right. I mean, that's a good idea, but it's not like they went and traded for a DK Metcalf or a Deebo Samuel or made one of these monumental type of moves that were available for other teams. And even like Jalen Ramsey's out there now. I don't expect the Packers to get involved in something like that. I just think they're the kind of the same team. And you made a point about this, about how when a team doesn't do a ton of stuff that we sort of are like, whatever, they don't move the needle. But I just think that they're about the same, which is not going to be good enough to compete in this division.
No, I think it's a fair criticism of the Packers. I mean, this goes back decades. It's interesting to me because I always made the point during the Brady Belichick years. I think Belichick had this false sense of security by having Brady. And the standard was so high there. If Belichick in the front office had a bad offseason, say, it was like, oh man, we're only going to the AFC Championship. But when they get there, it's like, man, Tom Brady's throwing to Austin Collie at the end of his career. That's rough. That's not going to work. Probably not winning the Super Bowl this year. And then when they had a good offseason, it's like, oh, look, there's Randy Moss. We're going to break records. And look, we drafted Gronk and Hernandez. We've got, one of the best offenses in the NFL. So you have a good offseason, and it's like, all right, you're thinking Super Bowl. And the Packers may have elements of that in their team building forever, because I know other executives around the league who want to model after the Packers. Like the Packers and the Steelers system is where they're like, we don't dabble in free agency. We pick our spots, one or two, that's it. But we're draft and develop. We sign our own guys and the whole deal. But did you get away with that because of Favre and Rodgers, like you're saying? Because again, I think the elite quarterback just gives you so much leeway. You can miss on a defensive tackle. You can miss on a guard. You can miss on a receiver and still win a whole lot. But if Jordan Love isn't that good, if he's not Aaron Rodgers good, you got to be better. You have to have better receivers. You have to have a better offensive line. And I think the Packers, when you look up and down their roster, they have like a lot of pretty good players. They've lost the stardom, I think, that they had a few years ago. They had Devontae Adams, Jair Alexander, Aaron Rodgers. They've lost some of the stars. And I think stars do matter. I mean, I'm always back and forth between, do you want to have 22 solid starters, or do you want to do where the Rams always, they had Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald and Stafford, and maybe it was top heavy, but those dudes can carry a lot. And I think the Packers are going this even keel, draft and develop. But I'm not saying you have to have stars, but when you don't, it's challenging when you're going up against the Lions and the Vikings, who have a lot more stars and depth on their roster. So yeah, I do feel a little, about the Packers. And I always oversimplify, but like if Jordan Love plays special, which he's shown, 10 to 12 weeks of in his career, all right, that does offset a lot. But if he doesn't, and he's just pretty good. That feels like a 9-win team. It doesn't feel as good as it maybe it did going into last offseason.
It looks to me like if you were building them on Madden, that they have every position ranking is like an 84, which is, it's good. Like they have 84 ranked wide receiver. I don't know how they grade now. They used to be much harsher. I don't know if you've noticed this with the modern Madden games. They've pumped those ratings up so everyone feels good about themselves. And I saw Jackson Slater laughing at that, the rookie offensive lineman for the Titans. Like, how did I get a 75? Guess they think I'm going to be pretty good, but everybody's a 75 now. They used to give guys like 50 if you were an unproven player, but it's a different rant.
Get me started. I mean, when you write the sequel and the PFF book and everything, when you write the second part, like our debates about when we were going to go to the 0 to 100 system, the people in favor of it were like, oh, people understand 0 to 100. They understand it. It's like, well, no, they don't, because it's a different scale, because some people think a 75 is a C because that's what it is in school and that's bad. But if the whole league is 75 or higher, then it's pretty like the scales are all different. The PFF scale is different from the Madden scale. So yeah, it's not easy to understand. They have their own scaling tendencies. Anyway.
This is why in terms of conversation, I usually focus on the rank for where somebody is rather than the exact grade. Because if you say, well, he's got, like you said, like he's got a 72.5, but on Madden the guy's like a 91, but that could be kind of the same performance.
Right.
Sometimes depending. If you're a guard, getting into the 70s these days means you're like a great player. That's another thing that's a little tricky too, is we have edge rushers that are getting high 80s, 90s. But the best guards in the league, there's maybe 2 guys in that ballpark. Right. But a little bit of a different discussion. But with the Bears, I'm gonna freelance here on. I didn't even write this one down, but would it be bold to say the Bears top 8 offense?
I mean, so much comes down to Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson meshing together. I don't think it's crazy. I mean, I like the way they've added playmakers. I love what they did on the offensive line. I don't know if it moves the needle to like a top 5 offensive line, but you get, Joe Thuney in there, and just they knew they needed to shore up the interior, and they did a nice job. I can't wait to see what Caleb Williams does with Ben Johnson, because Caleb Williams' season last year, how we are in sports media, we're always looking for clean narratives, right? And especially with young football players, the cleanest narrative you're looking for was he started slow and then light goes on and things are better forever. And so you're always looking for that with young quarterbacks. And sometimes it's true. Like Josh Allen's third year looked completely different from years 1 and 2, and he hasn't looked back since then. But with Caleb Williams, it was like 3 bad games, 2 good games. All right, this is it. And then 2 bad games, and then 2 good games, and then 2 bad, and then 2 good. And they all looked different, right? There's an offensive coordinator firing in there. And sometimes I'm watching and I'm like, there are 4 receivers within 5 yards of each other. That is a bad play call. And then there's other times it looked like he was so robotic in the pocket, whereas almost like at practice this week, they were like, you're going to look to this side of the field, and then you're going to go to this other side of the field and make your other read. And it's like, you're going to look here, and then cancel that and then go way over here. And it's just slow and methodical. Like there was no plays. Like when you see a great play caller, it's like the quarterback's looking to one side of the field, he cancels it quickly, and then boom, somebody comes open like right into his vision, and it's there. I don't think I saw that ever from Caleb Williams last year. And that's where Ben Johnson was great. Now, was that Ben Johnson being great with a Jared Goff, who my colleague Sam Monson always likes to call the color by numbers quarterback, right? You give him the pattern and he'll fill it in, and he'll read it out exactly how you ask and execute. Whereas Caleb Williams is just more of a natural playmaker. So that's where I can't wait to see how they mesh. But all I know is last year's offense wasn't working for the Bears and for Caleb Williams. And for every time he took a step forward, then there was 2 steps back a couple weeks later. So yeah, I mean, it's in the range of outcomes, because I think Caleb's still special. I think he could sit in the pocket, make the throws, throw the ball accurately enough. He's got to handle the pocket better. But there was points in his game. You hate making any sort of Mahomes comparison, but when you say what's great about Mahomes, it's just natural playmaking. And Allen and Caleb Williams has natural playmaking. He's got to do the mundane stuff better. That's where Allen took a big step forward. That's where Mahomes was special. Almost immediately, he took what was there and then added in the special. Caleb has the special. He's got to take care of the mundane. But I think that's where Ben Johnson comes in. And if he can get some of the easy stuff out of Caleb, and then let him play free and easy, yeah, the potential is through the roof for what they're capable of.
They have the bodies, the line, the coordinator, even the receivers. That they definitely have tight ends, many of them now, to be a top 10 offense. And they also don't have a good enough defense that they're going to just be able to run the football and play from ahead. So I could see it. I don't think it's crazy bold, but if you're taking 60, whatever, 8 sacks or something last year, that is just such a red flag. I haven't been a huge believer that he can ever elevate to what people said he was going to be. But that also kind of reminds me of like the Trevor Lawrence. He's very good. He could certainly win under the right circumstances, but we just love to call people generational. And look, there are generational talents in podcasting, but there's very few, I think, when it comes to quarterbacks coming out, and they just love that. It reminds me of when you and I were younger, oh man, Vince Carter, he's the next Jordan. Vince Carter was amazing, but he wasn't the next Jordan. And they, do that to Anthony Edwards now these days. It feels like the same thing. This guy's the next Luck or Manning. Like, okay, well, we'll see about that. I want to rapid fire a couple more just for fun here around the NFL. I have Brian Daboll being fired by week 14. What do you think of that?
No, I think that's realistic. And I've been joking that the Giants, I think they've actually done a better job building that team. But I think schedule is difficult. And when I'm interviewing for GM jobs next offseason, I wouldn't mind the Giants job. I think they've got some players there that I want to build around with Malik Neighbors and Abdul Carter. So I could see that absolutely playing out that way.
I think it's a huge mistake for their owner to come out and say, like, you better win next year. Everybody's getting fired. I think that's just stupid, because when you look at their roster and how they've built it, this is a side rant. Like when they move on from Saquon Barkley, that was the right move. They'd be paying Saquon Barkley gazillions of dollars to average 4.5 yards a carry and change nothing about their outcomes. They've drafted really well recently. They've made some good moves. They moved on from some of the right players. But they're a team that's going to not be good for maybe 1 or 2 more years. And if you're saying, well, you better do it now, then you do something even sillier and get Russell Wilson to try to win you 8 games. It's just, that's not a great situation for me.
You also have, just really quick, unbalanced incentives between front office coaching and then a rookie quarterback. I always say you got to do what's best for Jackson Dart, the rookie quarterback, to be good next year in 2026. Well, if you're incentivized to win now, he might be ready to play and you're not going to play him. He might not be ready to play and you're just going to play him because you need to do something. So they have to do well by Jackson Dart, not just, hey, go win this year, where it does look they're better this year, but the schedule is going to make it tough for that to actually show up, I think, in wins and losses.
Jaden Daniels, National Football League MVP.
I've called him a future MVP candidate, so that's not wild to me at all. I mean, look at the history of the year 2 quarterback jumps that we've seen, and guys like Mahomes, it was his second year where he was breaking records. It was Burrow's second year where he went to the Super Bowl. It was Allen's third year where he turned into a star. But there was a lot of the second year breakout. And Daniels already broke out. But now, is there a next step with Deebo Samuel in there? Yeah, I think that's absolutely. I think he's in the conversation this year regardless. Yep.
And then Cliff Kingsbury will be thrilled that he waited 1 extra year, because then the Brinks truck will roll up for him. How about this one? Saquon Barkley will run for 700 fewer yards than he did last year. And this one is very research based on all the 2,000-yard rushers that the next year, that's about what happens. They usually go down about 1.5 yards per carry and somewhere between 600 and 700 yards less.
I love this because this is the anti-Shouty Show take, right? This is what's the last thing that we saw. You're crazy. And there's 2 things at play here, right? If you had said this after every one of those previous 2,000-yard seasons, if you had said it that summer, hey, regression's coming, watch out, you can't bank on this again, they'd be like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. But it all happened. Oh, this guy got hurt or whatever. That's the first thing. And then the second one is, think about how many of his plays were 60-plus yard runs. There was that stat that I dug up late in the season. At one point, he had 20% of the 50 or 60-yard runs in the NFL. He had 20%. 1 out of 5 were Saquon Barkley out of all the runs in the NFL that went 60-plus or 50-plus or whatever my cutoff was. That's wild. And he's awesome, and that's his skill set, right? You give him a crease, and he could take it to the house. That's where he's special. It's really tough to replicate that, though. So I love it, man. I think that's a good bold take. The Uber regression wet blanket of reason after the 2,000-yard season.
Well, and the Vikings play the Eagles, so Vikings fans want that one as
Yeah.
well. But no, I mean, it even reminded me of the year that CJ Spiller went crazy and averaged like 6 yards a carry. And it was all based on a bunch of explosive runs that had gone for 20 plus. And I wrote an article that offseason, like, he's going to regress, guys. He's not going to have 15 out of his, 100 runs or whatever go for 20 plus yards. I'm thinking that might, and just the sheer amount on the body, 17 weeks, the whole playoff run. I think that will hurt as well. Just a couple more here. New Orleans to draft number 1 in 2026.
I think we ranked them on Check the Mic as the worst roster in the NFL. My model projecting teams for next year has them as the worst team in the NFL. I got the Saints as the worst team in the NFL. They're picking number 1 next year. That'd be my take. For the only thing that works against them for that prediction is the division, right? The South is way better than it's been, but it's still not great. Like, they're still able to sneak a game maybe from Carolina or the Bucs or the Falcons. Could they steal a win? Absolutely. But to me, they look like the worst team in the NFL, definitely.
Dave Canales for Coach of the Year of the Carolina Panthers. How much of even my football loving audience knows the coach of the Panthers?
The Panthers coach, Dr. Eric Eager, as executive of the year, we'll say. No, I mean, here's what needs to happen. Bryce Young continues what he did in the second half. And look, Sam and I are arguing with our listeners all the time when we're talking up Bryce Young. Like, he had some of the most impressive 140-yard passing outings I've seen, for whatever that's worth. And the detractors would say he threw for 140 yards. And I'm over there like, yeah, well, he threw 3 passes that got dropped that should have tacked on another 80 yards, changed the complexion of everything. If Bryce Young continues to play as well as he did in the second half of last year, post-benching, they've added a lot on the defensive line, added a weapon in Teteroa McMillan. They invested a lot on the defense generally. So, yeah, I don't think that's wild. A lot of stuff has to happen, though. He's got to leapfrog a lot of other coaches and teams, and they got to get to 10 wins plus, I would say. And so that would be the challenge, I think, for Canales to actually get there, is what is actually the ceiling for the Panthers? Because they could show a lot of life this year and win 8 or 9 games, and that's going to feel good. For him to win Coach of the Year, they probably have to get to like 12, and I'm not sure they could get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, that could be true. I guess I was thinking about it either goes one or the other way. Like, sometimes it's just a proven coach like a Belichick who has a career high in wins or something like that. But a lot of times it's, oh, we didn't think you were going to be that good. And so here's Coach of the, and that was the Vikings last year. I mean, of course, O'Connell was more than deserving, but it's usually, what was your Vegas line before? Oh, it was 6.5. You won 14. Like, you're in. Stefanski's had that, before as well. Okay.
He did that. Yeah. Stefanski does it, like, just sneaking into the playoffs, not necessarily battling for the number 1 seed. So yeah, it's possible.
Last one. Maybe the boldest ever, considering history is so strongly against this actually happening that what can you even say? The Buffalo Bills of Buffalo, New York, technically Orchard Park, New York, will win the Lombardi Trophy in their first Super Bowl championship in the long storied history of that franchise.
I love it. I'm all in on this. I was rooting. I have no rooting interest. I'm unbiased NFL analyst. But the Bills-Lions Super Bowl would be something special. So the fan in me deep down is like, man, I would love to see that. Now, one of the fan bases is thrilled, and one of the fan bases is more heartbreak. But man, a Bills-Lions Super Bowl would be great. I'm always interested in the mental aspect of the Bills coming so close and so close and so close, because you know how many teams overreact to the last thing that they saw, like a Shouty Show in the offseason. It's like, we couldn't stop the run this year, and they draft 3 nose tackles. Like, they overreact to the last thing that they saw. And I'm of the mind that the Bills don't need to overreact to anything. It's literally a play here and there. And I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you get the Bills and Josh Allen and the defense to make 1 or 2 more plays than Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs every single time, or just one time. I don't know how you get them to do that. I don't know how you get over this idea that you keep beating the Chiefs in the regular season, but not the playoffs, other than stay in the course. And I think the Bills, they had 1 starting spot open heading into the draft, and they drafted a corner who probably fills it in Maxwell Hairston. They've loaded up on the defensive line. Their reaction to their last couple of years is probably, hey, we had so many injuries, especially on defense. We don't want that to happen again. They're rolling about 12 deep on the defensive line right now, 7 or 8 deep in the secondary. So I love the way they've attacked this offseason. The nucleus is still there. They still have Allen, who at any time can take over a game. So one of these years, they're at least going to make it. And, one of these years, you'll be right with this bold take. We'll say, yes, I agree. This year, Bills win the Super Bowl.
The only thing is, I would have liked to have seen them draft a wide receiver or acquire a wide receiver that could have been a little bit more than just a B- guy. I feel like they have a bunch of B- guys there, but maybe that will add up to enough. That's my only skepticism about taking that offense to another level after seeing what they did last year in the playoffs, where they couldn't really throw effectively in the second half of that game. Thought, you need a dude who can be open at all times. That was Josh Allen's best career year, was when Diggs was in his peak and he could just lean on him. So I think that's my one skepticism, but that's kind of nitpicking when you have a team that is so close time and time again. So,
and I apologize, by the way. I usually know my audience really well.
You should have said Vikings. Yeah, I was going to point that out, but I just moved on.
Bills Vikings is the Super Bowl I'm rooting for at all times. And a Vikings win and a heartbreak for the Bills. But after all Minnesota fans have gone through, they deserve the Super Bowl. But I mean, you're the one picking the Bills, with the bold take. So that's all you. But I apologize. The one time I let that slip, moment of weakness there, not play into the audience the way I should have.
Hey, here's where I feel good for Detroit. That Vikings fans hate them now, which never happened before. There was like, oh, can't wait to play Detroit. There's free W. Thanks, Matt Patricia, and move on. I will. Are the Shouty Show t-shirts, are those out? Can I get one?
Yes, they're out. We have multiple ones. We have ones with like people talking, no Shouty Shows. We have the no Shouty Shows with the big X through it and everything. Yeah, they're out there right now. It is peak Shouty Show season. I mean, it's tough when teams only play 1 to 3 games a week, depending on your sport. And the Shouty Shows are resetting the GOAT conversation 5 days a week. It is really tough to put good content out there when you have to have a GOAT conversation 5 times and there's only like a game per week. So yeah, we recommend that you do not listen or watch the Shouty Shows.
We should have debated LeBron versus Mahomes on the show.
Oh,
versus the Cowboys. LeBron versus Michael versus the Cowboys versus Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
And then we would have done this right. Then the downloads would have been crazy.
What does Dak's legacy mean for Jordan, LeBron, Mahomes?
Is Taylor Swift a distraction at tight end university?
Yes.
A lot of people are asking.
Tight end numbers will be down forever.
Again, check the Mike podcast. I listen to every single episode on my jogs and in my car and everything else. You and Sam Monson do the best job out there. So thank you so much again, Steve, for your time. And we'll definitely do it again. Maybe when there's football games. I don't know.
Love it. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Anytime, man.